Hello and welcome to the Film Whisperers here on Ben TV. My name is Saj.
And I'm Alice.
So Alice, I feel as if we've been talking about what we're going to talk about for a while now. And I think it's probably one of the most popular genres of films that exists and have been taking over conversations for decades. And it's the genre of the romantic comedy.
Yes, the rom-com.
The rom-coms, yeah. Do you like rom-coms?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I won't call it my favorite genre, but I know I definitely will engage in a rom-com without thinking about it. And I'm saying that because I was a child of the 90s, like you, and I feel as if in the 90s we were bombarded with all these different rom-coms that ended up being box office hits, and you had your rom-com queens like your Meg Ryan's and your Julia Roberts that I feel as if just it made its way into conversation whenever we spoke about film.
Yeah. So you'd say we're bombarded. I'd say it's our golden era.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was the, the 90s, it was the golden era of the rom-coms. And I think one of the good things that it did was it catapulted a lot of female stars into that stardom territory that hadn't been seen in decades in Hollywood.
That's true.
And, actresses like Julia Roberts, they made a name for themselves because of the rom-coms that they did.
And they got their start and they got paid well.
Exactly. And yes, they demanded that because they had that box office power.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite rom-com?
Yes. I think Bridget Jones's Diary is probably one of my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Oh gosh. I don't know. It's a woman, the film's about a woman in her 30s, like early 30s. But I loved it since I was like a teenager. It makes you feel good. There's a happy ending. I think, we're children of the 90s. We're also children of Disney. So we want that fairy tale ending, which I think rom-coms supply to some degree. But I also think, I read the book, which was based on a newspaper column. And it's about a working woman as well. She doesn't like her job and she finds a better job in TV, and I don't know, it's just a lot of fun as well.
Have you watched it recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. What I loved about it, I really want to ask you actually what a rom-com is, but what I loved about that was forget the fact that there's two men in the picture and she's trying to figure out who she loves, but she owns an apartment in her early 30s in London, and oh my God, that's crazy. And I mean, it's empowering. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm thinking, for its time, that would have been quite an achievement for someone that age.
Yeah, like she's doing well for herself in the publishing house. I think she's just an assistant at the time as well. Yeah. Fanning about with press releases.
So what is a rom-com? I want to unpack this. What is a rom-com?
Okay, so it's a romantic comedy. It's kind of subgenre of comedy. So when I looked it up, it didn't say a subgenre like any of the definitions. It was always subgenre of comedy, not romance, or like a romance, which I found interesting.
Okay.
But if this is kind of the definition I got, it's a film focused on humorous plotlines centered on romantic ideas such as dating, marriage, breakups, and true love. So, in saying that, what would you say your favorite rom-com is?
For the longest time, I would have said Pretty Woman. However, again, I'm a victim to being a child of the 90s, where the Pretty Woman was huge, and I recognise it's very problematic now. But I think over the last 10 years, I'm going to say Crazy Rich Asians. And I think that was something so groundbreaking about that film that this is my bias coming through, but I think one of the reasons as to why we have so much racial diversity on screen today is because of the success of that film. Because when they did that film, I believe it was a gamble because Hollywood took the risk of putting on a film, or rather producing a film that predominantly had Asian characters in it, and I believe they thought it would fail, but
Really?
it was the opposite. And
Yeah.
I remember, and this is when I remember thinking, this is why diversity is so important. I went to see that at a cinema, and for the first time ever, I saw that many people of Asian backgrounds in the cinema. And I remember thinking, I've never seen this before. And I believe it is because they finally got the opportunity to see a film where people that look like them were represented on the big screen. So maybe 10 years from now, we're going to look back at Crazy Rich Asians and think even the title's problematic.
Yeah.
But for what it did for its time, that makes me want to label it as my favorite rom-com.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that. I found it really refreshing when I saw that. I love films like Crazy Rich Asians where you're so stuck in a specific kind of narrative. Usually it was two white Western people, a male and a female falling in love. So when we got that, I love it when it just gave you this refreshing kind of a new point of view to rom-coms, I think.
What are some of the films that you would consider to be, the quintessential rom-com, so to speak?
Okay, well, I'd say, there's a few. Look, if we talk about rom-com and we talk about the history of rom-coms, I think it starts off, with Shakespeare.
Yes.
So we can look at films which have kind of taken his work. So Taming of the Shrew, it's 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yes.
Which is a classic.
Yes.
The 90s classic.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the Shakespearean version, of course, where this is obviously centuries ago, it's misogynist.
Yes.
So bad.
It's
and then
so bad.
it's so and then the 90s just made it into this feminist classic and made Catherine into this feminist icon, which I thought was, great.
Which was interesting, actually, because they did remake The Taming of the Shrew before the 90s. I think they did maybe 2 films before that.
Yeah.
One
with Elizabeth Taylor.
With Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
And it's still very sexist. I think that was in maybe the 50s,
probably 50s or 60s.
Yeah. And it was still problematic. They hadn't really refreshed the narrative.
Yeah.
But then when you get to 10 Things I Hate About You, it's really refreshing.
Yeah.
But interesting because she still is the lead character, the shrew. She becomes a little bit more softer, a little bit more feminist, feminine, would you say?
Yes, I mean...
There's a little bit of it.
Yeah. Well,
it's still rebucking the ideas.
Well, they cast Julia Stiles. Let's just start with that. I mean, what else? When you cast Julia Stiles, I feel as if those characteristics that you just mentioned, it's part of the package.
Yeah, it's hard and soft.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just trying to think of who they could have cast that could have emulated what Catherine from Taming of the Shrew could have been like. And I mean, no one comes to mind at the moment, but I mean, when you cast someone like Julia Stiles, it's you're going to get what are you going to get.
I also think it's interesting. See that film, Taming the Shrew. I mean, Shakespeare's work. It's kind of from both perspectives.
Yes.
In 10 Things I Hate About You, you've got the male Heath Ledger's perspective, and then Kat's perspective, Julia Stiles. But then talking about other early rom-coms, I'd say that Jane Austen's books, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Pride and Prejudice, they're really the catalyst for what we see today. In that it's the women's perspective. Yeah. It's about them getting married, but it's being realistic. It's saying this is our situation in life. We need to get married for financial stability, security. And I think that's what you see in a lot of modern day rom-coms.
Okay. Is it just about the love story? Because what about films like Bend It Like Beckham, Legally Blonde, Bring It On, where yes, the girl gets the guy in the end for, say, all 3 of those films, but the narrative is more than just romance.
So I guess that's really looking at genre.
Yes.
And how much we're going to pigeonhole a rom-com. So there is romance in those films.
Yes.
There's usually a happy ending. The protagonist finds a romantic relationship at the end, even if that's not the main goal. There's usually other situations. So Bend It Like Beckham acceptance from family, I believe.
Yeah.
Gets to do soccer, football, sport. Legally Blonde proves to herself and everyone else that she's more than what people are seeing. I mean, you're an expert on Legally Blonde, so please tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you are right. It's just, I would struggle to call it a rom-com because of personal biases. Because, I would say a film like that, a film like Many Like Beckham, and even Bring It On, those three films, they are feminist classics. And, that's one of the things I was going to ask. It's like, can a feminist classic be a rom-com?
Yeah, well, why would we say that it can't be a rom-com? I think, in society, rom-coms are kind of looked down on, just in general. They're compared to other films, if you want to get snobby about it, they're kind of given less importance. And I think that's probably because it's women's stories.
I disagree.
Really?
Only because, let's remove Legally Blonde, Benny Like Beckham, and Bring It On from this, because a lot of the time, those stories are written by men. So are they women's stories?
I guess it depends on what time we're talking about, because there's like more modern ones. Was Sleepless in Seattle, I think that was written by a woman.
Nora Ephron, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it was directed by her. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if it was written by her.
But I guess, if a male's writing the story, is it a feminist story? I mean, if the woman is the main protagonist, it's from her point of view, but perhaps skewed because a male's written that point of view. That's a hard one.
Yeah. So I know, I don't know who the writers for Bring It On are, but I know Legally Blonde's written by two women, and Benny Like Beckham's written by a woman as well. So I think, in that way, so let's just remove them from that sort of equation of what a rom-com is. But yeah, so you were saying that people put it down because they're women's stories. I also think that comedy in general and people's view on comedy I think that's where it starts, because I don't think people take comedy seriously, and it's that sentence itself is quite an oxymoron, isn't it? It's like it's comedy, it's meant to be light, and I think that's where it stems from. So a rom-com or anything stemming from comedy, people don't take seriously. I don't know, is it because it's women's stories or whether it's comedy? I don't know.
I think that in general, a good comedy is probably lifted up a little bit more than a romantic comedy if the lead is a female. I think that's what I'm talking about. Even if the story, and I'm not saying that there's not issues with rom-coms. Yes. There's definitely some big issues which we can discuss, but I think in general it's the chick flick, which is also a subgenre of a comedy film, a romance comedy.
Yeah.
So it's the female, and it's about the woman getting the love interest, perhaps modern day times, getting a good job, being secure. And I think also there's some interest in what the male is, because in a rom-com, I think it is a bit sexist in general.
Yeah. Not
just the woman, who's usually very pretty, is having a really hard time, but has a fabulous kitchen or a beautiful apartment in New York or London. It's usually very privileged. But also the male that we're kind of told, so the audience is told to look at to and think, yeah, that'd be a good catch, is also really privileged. It's also very like this unattainable, charismatic, well-connected, confident male. And I think that might be another reason why male audiences aren't interested in the film, because they're seeing this portrayal of this unattainable character, and that's what all the women are looking for. They're not looking for diversity, let's just say.
Right. Okay, so are there rom-coms that are targeted at men?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
And I think that they don't get put down as much as the other ones do. So 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Oh yeah, okay, yep. Yes.
Deadpool.
Really? Okay, yep.
In a way.
He's got the girl though.
It's not, but it doesn't have to be. A rom-com is just a comedy with a romantic storyline.
Yeah.
So, and they're kind of infused within each other. So it's from the male perspective, these films. So it's about the 40-Year-Old Virgin, which is a common thing, maybe not 40, it's a bit
Yeah.
for comedic purposes.
Yeah.
It's been opened up to 40, but there are virgins, male virgins that don't know how to talk to women, to have sex with women.
So I feel as if the formula here is that when a rom-com is aimed at women, the male character in the film is incredibly attractive and your Hemsworthy type person. Yeah. Whereas when a rom-com is pitched at men, the men in the film are considered the geeky, still attractive compared to you. You know, they're still Hollywood people, but they're portrayed to be this nerdy, they don't have many friends, the loser, so to speak, and they're chasing after this incredibly beautiful woman. So I guess even American Pie, I guess, would be something very similar, where it's bro culture, but then at the end they all fall in love with these women. So
they're all trying to get laid, but they end up in romantic relationships.
That is interesting. I guess I would not have really seen it like that, because I guess even There's Something About Mary would sort of fall in that same genre of being targeted at men.
It's like the everyday man, like it's someone that they can see themselves in.
Yeah.
And in saying that, I think it's harder for the women-centered rom-coms. It's like they try to make them the women, everyday women, but it's usually not. It's usually they've stripped them down a bit, and then they always have their makeover, and then it's like, oh my god, she's beautiful.
I know, it's horrible.
Just needed some mascara.
What do you think a rom-com in 2023 would look like? Because I'm also thinking that we've come to the point in media where there's so much awareness on tropes that are problematic that we are now trying to move away from it. So I'm just trying to think of, so I think 10 years ago, Bridesmaids came out, or probably maybe 10, 11 years ago. Yeah. And I would say, now I know Kristen Wiig, I'm not saying it, she's definitely not your everyday woman. No. She's gorgeous.
She's still beautiful.
She's beautiful, and so is Maya Rudolph.
Yeah.
But having said that, the way the film portrays women is not that, made over, beautiful. Like it's
the Katherine Heigls.
The Katherine Heigls. They're just
the Julia Roberts.
The Julia Roberts. They're just women. Yeah. Do you reckon that's becoming more of a trope now?
I think it is. It's more that they see that, like, genres usually they've got a cycle. There's like usually 4 cycles: the primitive, the classical, the revisionist, and then the parodic.
Okay.
The genres kind of go through that. So we've got the start of the genre. So maybe for the rom-coms, it's kind of in the 80s. I mean, it was the 50s and the 60s, the screwball comedy,
yes,
the Some Like It Hot,
yes,
kind of like that. But then the more modern, how we kind of see it, getting married, kind of films, it's kind of like the 80s. I feel like it started off, and then the 90s, the ones that we know. We kind of saw that, and then the 90s we start to see seeing what the genre is, seeing the tropes, and then late 90s I feel like we started playing with those tropes. So you get like the 10 Things I Hate About You, and I think, and then we got the parodies, so like making fun of the teen rom-coms and stuff like that. But I feel like we're kind of in the slump, because it kind of quietens down the genre. Yeah. Because it's also that the people who are paying for these movies to get made, they're seeing that they're getting return. Yeah. So the audience is interested, and then the interest wanes. And I think we're kind of at the wane at the moment. I feel like we need a new uplift of the rom-coms. What do you think? I think we're in a drought at the moment.
I think so too, but I feel as if, look, I think post-COVID, there's been a lot of talk about, well, which films are re-energizing the box office at the moment. And Ticket to Paradise, remember, the film with Julia Roberts and George Clooney was incredibly successful, and that came out last year. And I know it's still, Julia Roberts, but that was an example of here's a rom-com that really, it follows a formula that's slightly different. So this is about a divorced couple that reignites their romance. Yeah. And it was a hit. Yeah. But then at the same time, Bros, that came out around the same time as Ticket to Paradise, but which was about 2 men, it flopped.
I know, it's so disappointing.
Yes, and to be honest, I personally wasn't a fan of Bros.
You didn't like it?
I did not like it, no. And I think it's because there is something about seeing gay men on screen that I get very funny about. And I think seeing Bros was just an example of, what are you trying to tell me here? And it's going back to that culture of, stop giving us these storylines of, the absolutely insanely attractive man falling in love with someone who we're meant to think is unattractive, who is Billy Eichner. And I'm there going, I'm sorry, but the straight world did this in the 90s, and let's just not. It doesn't make sense for us to go down that road now. But around the same time as Bros, this other film called Fire Island came out.
Yeah, love Fire Island.
And that was great. And I think it's because the story was slightly different. The cast was more diverse, and I think it was just done better. And it was not your typical, here's two people living in New York that discover each other, but instead they set it to be at this festival, and I don't know, the formula was different.
I think it was good because it was kind of, even from my perspective, Fire Island, I always hear about this island and this magical time. So it's kind of like a peek behind the curtains as well. It's kind of like opening up this world to me. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So look, I think to answer your question on have rom-coms died, I don't know. I feel as if, would Barbie be a rom-com?
She doesn't end up with the guy at the end.
No, she doesn't.
Which is, I guess it's still a rom-com. It's like 500 Days of Summer.
Yes.
Which, just goes against that trope.
Yeah. See what I mean? It's so difficult. But like, Barbie's probably going to be the most successful film of this year.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I guess it is a little bit, right? Yeah, you could put it in that category. I wouldn't go against that.
Yeah, but it's definitely a feminist film.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Ken in it, but yeah, it's definitely a feminist.
Yeah. So I think in that regard, there's maybe people don't even use the term rom-com anymore because it's taken on this new journey, and what we're seeing right now is films that do have romance, they've got comedy, but then there's also another narrative to it.
I think I kind of get annoyed that people like saying that people put rom-com in this category and they're against it and stuff, because to me I see that as, I know you kind of don't agree, but I kind of find like it is a bit sexist in my opinion, because it's just the chick flick thing, put it under the rug. Let's not call it rom-com anymore. Let's call it, I don't know, comedy romance.
Yeah.
Like, comedy with there's a hint of romance in it. Or, just sweeping under the rug. Like, I don't like when they're trying to change it or call it something different when it's really the same thing, and it kind of takes away from what the romance comedies have done for films and for women to give them some storylines and stuff. But let's talk about what we don't like about the rom-com.
I'm going to agree with you, Alice. Yeah. It is sexist.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is, I guess, part of the problem. And I think it's almost like, when we were kids, we look back now and we think of how problematic Disney was, because the whole thing was about the princess falling in love with the prince. But I think rom-coms, it's almost like the adult version of a Disney cartoon set in a real world dimension. So it's almost like the same thing. So it's giving people this unrealistic expectation of what dating is, of how to find a partner is.
What is romantic?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I dislike about it, when they're showing really kind of creepy things, predator things that the males or the females do in the films, but they put it on this sugar-coated, it's romantic, and these big gestures, like that it's a positive thing and that we should look for that. And in the film, you get that fuzzy feeling when someone gets a boombox outside your house at night, something like that, like a big romantic gesture. When in real life, maybe that'd be really creepy.
Yeah. Or when she says no, but he keeps coming after her.
Yeah.
And that's seen as, oh my God, how gorgeous is this? He's so interested when no means no.
Yeah, yeah. I think we can see this in female and male. I think with the one where I think the woman's a bit predatory is the proposal.
Oh, yes.
Yep. So that's where a boss gets the person that works under them, their assistant, I think, to pretend to be married with her, so she can get a green card because she's Canadian.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not okay.
No, that's not okay at all. Yeah, no. Yeah.
And Love Actually. I love Actually. So I can say that I can still love the film and see the problem with it, but I love Actually. I watch it every Christmas.
I don't.
But
we don't.
But let's talk about the biggest issues, please. I know that you don't like it, so I'll let you go.
Look, I think I don't even know where to start with Love Actually. I think it is just this misogynist cauldron of stories that it's just so disgusting. And I think I encourage anyone watching this to go find the Jezebel article that came out. It came out about a decade ago that really unpacks how problematic Love Actually is. And I swear, if you read that article, you will never see Love Actually in the same light again. But anyway,
I think I've read it.
Okay, you did. All right. Okay. But look, it is but that's just my opinion. I don't like it. I find it problematic, but I can see the appeal because they show romance and it's Christmas.
And it's happy endings, and it's it's everything that makes you get that happy ending kind of thing, and that maybe you want someone to care about you that much and to show you how much they love you, and wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
But then in reality, there's two sides of the coin, of the fantasy land, which when I watch a movie I step into, and then the reality.
Yeah. I must say though, Emma Thompson in that was phenomenal, and I think you felt her pain. That's got to be one of the most heartbreaking scenes in cinematic history, where she goes into the room and has a cry, and that you felt her pain in that scene. So
it's so good, makes me cry every time.
You know what, that scene was amazing. I think we should wrap this up now because I think we've had a good unpack. I'm not against.
So much to talk about.
I think what I've learned is with rom-coms, the definition that you gave is something that used to be true. It has evolved now to the point where that element exists, but there's also an added dimension to it. So they use something like football or cheerleading or another culture to then tell a love story. Yeah, it's a bigger umbrella. Yes.
And you can't just define it as them all being that specific genre, the romantic comedy. Yeah, I agree.
And it is less problematic as how it used to be in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, as we've moved forward as society, we're seeing that reflected in the films, especially since the Me Too movement as well. There's more thought.
And I think there's also more racial diversity as well.
Which is great. And sexuality. More mixed, Yeah,
100%. Well, that was a great unpack, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you've been watching The Film Whisperers here on Ben TV. My name is Saj.
And I'm Alice.
Thank you.
Thanks.